We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream. Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
Roger Stone, one of the president's longest-serving political advisors, longtime friend of the president, has now been found guilty on 7 counts of lying to Congress and tampering with a witness. This is a spinoff of Robert Mueller's investigation. He's now facing up to 20 years in prison, as you see him heading into the courtroom with his wife earlier this morning. I want to go straight to our Chief Justice correspondent, Pierre Thomas, with the latest on that verdict.
George, you're correct. This is 7 federal felonies that Roger Stone has been convicted of, all dealing with the fact that he lied to Congress about his efforts to get the information that WikiLeaks was going to provide concerning dirt about Hillary Clinton during the 2016 election. And why did he do it? Prosecutors in the case this week in their closing arguments pointed out to the fact that he did it to protect the president, or then candidate Donald Trump. Let me give you a statement from the closing arguments. Quote, Stone knew that if his information came out, it would likely look really bad for his longtime associate, Donald Trump. So he lied to the committee. So again, George, this is a confidant of the president, a man who described himself as a so-called dirty trickster, one who loved Richard Nixon, who's now been convicted of 7 federal felonies and now facing prison time, George.
Testimony during the trial included evidence of phone calls between Roger Stone and the president during the campaign, where the president was being informed about what WikiLeaks may or may not have been doing. That testimony came from the president's former deputy campaign manager, Rick Gates.
I know nothing.
He knows nothing. So that's a fatality, isn't it, everybody?
Fatality.
Let's start keeping a tote board, okay? Roger Stone found guilty this morning on all 7 counts that he was charged with. 7 felonies. 7. It's a 67-year-old dirty trickster that started with Richard Nixon and has been perverting our political system ever since. And finally, a jury had a chance to hear what he does for a living, find out how he lies to Congress, find out that he, protects the corrupt and goes to the mat for them and will tamper with witnesses, intimidate our friend Randy Credico, threaten to kill him, threaten to take his dog, all this to keep him quiet. And then at the same time, we have the testimony of Maria Yovanovitch on Capitol Hill, and she's testifying. And as she's testifying, Donald Trump is intimidating the witness. He's tweeting about her and just smearing her, besmirching her, defaming her in real time. This is what corrupt people do when the bar of justice becomes very close to their little heads. Okay, instead of, pounding the law, the law is on my side. Instead of pounding the facts will show I did not. They pound the table and they denigrate the witnesses. They attack the messenger. That's what Roger Stone, one of his felonies, was today. Attacking Randy Credico, attacking a messenger, witness tampering, forcing Randy Credico to take the Fifth Amendment in front of Congress because he was terrified that Roger Stone would actually have him whacked and steal his freaking dog. And when Randy Credico was telling Roger Stone, I can't operate like this. I cannot do this kind of thing. He said, no one cares. No one cares whether or not I'm asking you to take the fall for me and Donald Trump, who obviously were colluding with the Russians who stole hacked material, fenced it through WikiLeaks, and Roger Stone was the intermediary between the Trump campaign and Julian Assange, and Julian Assange lied about where he got that material. He got it from the Russians, okay? So I don't know if the president's going to pardon Roger Stone, but I will tell you it was weird that Judge Berman let Roger Stone leave the courtroom. So he's out there somewhere. I don't know if he's, at the airport buying a one-way ticket to, Austria, like Parnas and I don't know. But this is an amazing day. So we have that. We have the second appeals court ruling that Donald Trump must produce his tax returns. Mazars, who has his tax returns, are indeed allowed and required to produce the president's tax returns to the district attorney in Manhattan for their investigation into Trump's, fraud with regard to paying off Stormy Daniels And the McDougal girl who had the worst taste in the world, beautiful girl, literally fell in love with this monster. So there's that. Tomorrow or today, behind closed doors, the deposition of a guy named David Holmes is being secured. David Holmes is the person that Ambassador Bill Taylor, who replaced Marie Yovanovitch over in Ukraine, because Mike Pompeo picked him. Donald Trump picked Mike Pompeo, and Donald Trump asked Bill Taylor to take Marie Yovanovitch's place in Ukraine because they smeared her, defamed her, and ran her out of town so that Parnas and Fruman and Giuliani could start some, business that they wanted to start in naftogaz, right? They wanted to corrupt Ukraine. They were introducing even more corruption. And we know this because Parnas and Fruman have been indicted. So they're criminals. And they were criminals then. So we have that. She's testifying today. And I tell you, even the people over at Fox News, Chris Wallace said, if you're not moved by the testimony of Marie Yovanovitch today, you don't have a pulse. Seriously, dude. And so while she's testifying, the president defames her. He starts tweeting out a storm. Adam Schiff actually sees the tweets and reads them to her.
Mr. Kent, is pressuring Ukraine to conduct what I believe you've called...
Oh, that's the wrong one. I'm sorry.
Master Yovanovitch, as we sit here testifying, the president is attacking you on Twitter. And I'd like to give you a chance to respond. I'll read
in real time
one of his tweets.
He's intimidating a
Everywhere
witness.
Marie Yovanovitch went turned bad. She started off in Somalia. How did that go? He goes on to say, later in the tweet, is a U.S. president's absolute right to appoint ambassadors. First of all, Ambassador Yovanovitch, the Senate has a chance to confirm or deny an ambassador, do they not?
Yes, advise and consent.
But would you like to respond to the president's attack that everywhere you went turned bad?
Well, I don't think I have such powers, not in Mogadishu, Somalia, and not in other places. I actually think that where I've served over the years, I and others have demonstrably made things better, for the U.S. as well as for the countries that I've served in. Ukraine, for example, where there are huge challenges, including, on the issue that we're discussing today of corruption. Huge challenges, but they've made a lot of progress since 2014, including in the years that I was there. And I think in part, the Ukrainian people get the most credit for that. But a part of that credit goes to the work of the United States and to me as the ambassador in Ukraine.
Ambassador, you've shown the courage to come forward today and testify. Notwithstanding the fact you were urged by the White House or State Department not to.
Yep.
Notwithstanding the fact that, as you testified earlier, the president implicitly threatened you in that call record. And now the president in real time is attacking you. What effect do you think that has on other witnesses' willingness to come forward and expose wrongdoing?
Well, it's very intimidating.
There you have it.
Designed to intimidate, is it not?
I can't speak to what the president is trying to do, but I think the effect is to be intimidating.
Oh! Well, I want to let you know, Ambassador, that some of us here take witness intimidation very, very seriously.
He's doing it in real time. Roger Stone was just convicted of witness tampering and witness intimidation. She's being intimidated in real time as she's under oath testifying. It's a pattern and a practice. This is the most corrupt White House ever. And that's saying something.
All things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
All right, as things deteriorate for the President of the United States, and the GOP comes up empty with a defense for any of this, corruption that he has not only engaged in, but encourages. I mean, how many people are going to go to jail for this guy? It's amazing. And, here I'm going to play the live testimony, but I just want you to keep in mind as you're watching it that everybody around Richard Nixon went to jail except for Richard Nixon, okay? And this is what Trump is counting on, that everybody will go to jail for him except for him. It's a very sick scenario that's playing out in this man's mind. But let's listen to the live testimony. This is part 2 of Maria Yovanovitch's day in front of the House Intelligence Committee. Of course, Adam Schiff right now is asking her some questions. We'll listen in and see how long this goes.
If not blown the whistle, we wouldn't be here. And I think it is appalling that my colleagues continue to want to out this whistleblower so that he or she can be punished by this president. But let's underscore once again, while you are the beginning of this story, you're not the end of it, but nonetheless, the beginning is important because the beginning of the story is an effort to get you out of the way, an effort by Rudy Giuliani and Fruman and Parnas and corrupt Ukrainians like Lutsenko to get you out of the way because they felt you were an impediment to these political investigations the president so desperately wanted. Giuliani has made it abundantly clear he was in Ukraine on a mission for his client, for the president, to investigate the Bidens. And you were viewed as an obstacle that had to go, not just by Giuliani, but by the President of the United States. And if people had any doubt about it, they should do what the President asks, read the transcript. And what they'll see in that transcript is the President praises the corrupt. He praises the corrupt, Lutsenko. He condemns the just, you. And then he asks for an investigation of the Bidens. There is no camouflaging that corrupt intent. We are adjourned.
Mr. Speaker,
we are.
Mr. Chairman, you disparaged those members on this side of the aisle. We should have a chance to respond to your disparaging remarks.
They're applauding.
Mr. Chairman, I demand or speak. Mr. Chairman.
All right, you get the drift. It's that is the end of the testimony of Maria Yovanovitch. Now, this went on all morning long, and it actually is the melding of the previous testimony that we heard from Ambassador Bill Taylor, who took her place. And it is the melding together of the facts that were laid out by George Kent, who is the Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for Ukraine. And this is only day 2 of the impeachment inquiry. That's all that we've seen so far is 3 witnesses, and they were all devastating to Donald Trump. The Republicans continue to spin this crazy conspiracy theory about Ukraine and a server, and they hid it, and that the Bidens were really the corrupt ones, and that there was a cover-up to benefit the Biden. Although I will tell you, George Kent testified that he thought that Biden being on the board of a Ukrainian gas company while his father was the vice president of the United States could create a conflict of interest. She said the same damn thing in her testimony today. So that aside, they asked whether or not any crimes were committed by Hunter Biden. They all agree no crimes were committed. And in fact, they lay out the process by which, if a crime had been committed by an American citizen in Ukraine, the U.S. Embassy had law enforcement present, FBI agents present, intelligence community contacts that would then have investigated any American citizen who was doing corrupt things in a country where the charge was for our ambassadors to decorrupt, to engage in anti-corruption efforts so that Ukraine could become part of Europe, could become part of NATO, could become part of the West, and could attract foreign business interests from countries all over the world because they had engaged in anti-corruption efforts. That is what all of these State Department officials, all of these ambassadors do at their embassies wherever they are in the world. So they are heroes. They are silent. They are government employees who spend their time educating themselves on the countries that they're going to represent, who learn languages of the countries they're going to represent, who get master's degrees in foreign relations and foreign policy, who study and work their tails off, and then finally get their dream job of representing this country overseas for a government salary. I mean, it is really a thankless job. But Marie Yovanovitch this morning testified that Rudy Giuliani was relying on the exact corrupt officials for this bogus claim about Hunter Biden that ignored corruption in Ukraine.
Mr. Giuliani should have known those claims were suspect, coming as they reportedly did from individuals with questionable motives and with reason to believe that their political and financial ambitions would be stymied by our anti-corruption policy in Ukraine. After being asked by the Undersecretary of State for Political Affairs in early March 2019 to extend my tour until 2020, the smear campaign against me entered a new public phase in the United States. In the wake of the negative press, State Department officials suggested an earlier departure, and we agreed upon July 2019. I was then abruptly told, just weeks later in late April, to come back to Washington from Ukraine on the next plane. At the time I departed, Ukraine had just concluded game-changing presidential elections. It was a sensitive period with much at stake for the United States and called for all the experience and expertise we could muster. When I returned to the United States, Deputy Secretary of State Sullivan told me there had been a concerted campaign against me, that the president no longer wished me to serve as ambassador to Ukraine, and that, in fact, the president had been pushing for my removal since the prior summer. As Mr. Sullivan recently recounted during his Senate confirmation hearing, neither he nor anyone else ever explained or sought to justify the president's concerns about me, nor did anyone in the department justify my early departure by suggesting I had done something wrong. I appreciate that Mr. Sullivan publicly affirmed at his hearing that I had served capably and admirably. Although then and now, I have always understood that I served at the pleasure of the president, I still find it difficult to comprehend that foreign and private interests were able to undermine U.S. interests in this way. Individuals who apparently felt stymied by our efforts to promote stated U.S. policy against corruption, that is, to do our mission.
So there you have her testifying about a months-long, even longer than we suspected, campaign to remove her by Rudy Giuliani, Parnas, Furman, who are now indicted for funneling Russian money into the elections, and then trying to intimidate her into silence.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
And was it Mr. Lutsenko, among others, who coordinated with Mr. Giuliani to peddle false accusations against you as well as the Bidens?
Yes, that is my understanding.
Whoops.
And were these smears also amplified by the president's son, Donald Trump Jr., as well as certain hosts on Fox?
Yes, yes, that is the case.
In the face of this smear campaign, did colleagues at the State Department try to get a statement of support for you from Secretary Pompeo?
Yes.
Were they successful?
No.
Did you come to learn that they couldn't issue such a statement because they feared it would be undercut by the president?
Yes.
I mean, this is devastating stuff. You have the president's personal attorney using $400 million of taxpayer dollars to dangle in front of a country that is in a hot war, a real shooting war. People are dying, literally dying. The testimony from Ambassador Bill Taylor, who replaced her, is that people were dying this week People were dying in Ukraine. Ukrainian soldiers were facing Russian aggression and dying. Now, imagine that American soldiers were facing aggression by Russian soldiers here in the United States. And that all of a sudden, the president is using the ability for our soldiers to defend themselves as some sort of an official act that he will not complete, giving them their defense systems unless and until somebody, gives him, a false statement about Hunter Biden. I mean, this is how crass this is. This is how corrupt this is. This is how low he goes. This is how self-serving these people are. I mean, it's just so now Roger Stone is in jail, guilty of 7 felonies. Rudy Giuliani's going to go to jail too. I don't know. Was the president going to preemptively pardon everybody? This is so sick. And all of the questions about was Giuliani doing anything to promote U.S. national security?
Attempted bribery isn't in.
Oh, she's so.
Was Mr. Giuliani promoting U.S. national interests or policy in Ukraine, Ambassador?
I don't think so, ma'am.
Mr. Kent?
No, he was not.
What interests do you believe he was promoting, Mr. Kent?
I believe he was looking to dig up political dirt against a potential rival in the next election cycle.
Oh, Jesus, God. Oh, my. For the love of...
Oh, for God's sake.
Seriously. All right, so here's some more of the testimony from today. We've already seen that the president in real time is intimidating the witness, that he's tweeting bad things about her. We already know that his perfect call included comments that were demeaning, degrading, and defamatory because they were false, and he knew they were false, about her, saying she was bad news and she's about to go through some things. This is what he said on his perfect call transcript. Now, we don't have the whole call, as you know. Can you imagine what they deleted and didn't release? Okay. But that part that was released actually had this in it, that he was threatening her, defaming her, smearing her, talking to the president of Ukraine and saying she's bad news and she's about to go through some things. Okay. And so then we know while she's testifying, the idiot boy is tweeting at her, not understanding that is witness intimidation. Not understanding what he's doing in real time is a felony. Not even comprehending that. So the counsel for our side, Dan Goldman, he asked her, how are you coping? How are you dealing?
You were one of the most senior diplomats in the State Department. You've been there for 33 years.
33.
You've won numerous awards. You've been appointed as an ambassador 3 times by both Republican and Democratic presidents. And the State Department would not issue a statement in support of you against false allegations because they were concerned about a tweet from the President of the United States?
That's my understanding.
Mr. Goldman, if I could follow up on that question, it seems like an appropriate time. Ambassador Yovanovitch, as we sit here testifying, the president is attacking you on Twitter.
Honestly, this is just, this is bizarre. This is just, you have a president who is completely unaware of the crimes that he is committing in real time because I'm sure, Mr. Cipollini over at the White House counsel told him, I wouldn't do that, Mr. President. That's witness intimidation. He doesn't want to hear it. He doesn't even want to be warned. He doesn't even want to be informed. He doesn't even want to be told that what he's about to do is a felony. They're just going to tack all this onto the articles of impeachment now. I mean, this is crazy. But, I want to play you an exchange. This is the longest. Well, I don't think we have time in this segment. How many minutes do I have left here? Yeah, like 2. All right. When we come back, I want to play you a longer segment of Adam Schiff questioning Marie Yovanovitch and setting the record straight because you have these lunatic Republicans who are saying really dumb things. They're saying things like, this is all hearsay. This is all secondhand. Nobody spoke to the president. This has nothing to do with Donald Trump. Rudy Giuliani was, off on his own. Obviously, that's not true. Obviously, the president has said that Rudy Giuliani is his attorney. Obviously, the president has said he's a great guy. Obviously, the president knew. Obviously, the president met with Parnas and Fruman many, many times. There was testimony about dinners where they all sat down together and they talked about their plans to get rid of her, with the president present, with Rudy Giuliani present, with Parnas present, with Fruman present, but he doesn't know them. I never met them. I don't know them. You have to ask Rudy. Rudy's my attorney. I mean, this is like the same repetitive pattern with this president. Pattern and practice is something that's admissible in a court of law. And oh, by the way, so is hearsay. You know, let me give you an example of hearsay. So I'm cooking dinner in the kitchen, and Howard is in the living room, and Howard says, the president is on the TV. Now, I can't hear the TV because I'm in the kitchen. Do I have a reasonable ability to rely on the fact that Howard sees the president on the TV? Yes, I do. So that's hearsay. But a very good lawyer can almost always get a reliable witness's hearsay admitted into a court. So, I mean, every defense that they have dreamt up, they're all falling apart. Also, the defense Lindsey Graham has, which is he's just not going to read any of the transcripts, he's just not going to watch any of the impeachment hearings. And oh, by the way, these are all Democratic witnesses that have only been called by Democrats and da-da-da-da-da. Well, I got news for you, Lindsey. The trial will be in the Senate, and the Senate is controlled by the grand old perverts. It's in Republican hands. So what excuse will you use during the trial? This will not be Democratic witnesses only. This will not be. Everything that they are throwing at this has to do with procedure. It has to do with the way that depositions were done. But it's all going to fall apart. What then? What will they do and say then?
Clear. This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
All right, let me replay you after the Republicans try to, scream and yell at her and tell her, hey, if the president wants you gone, he has every right to want you gone, but not on the advice of Rudy Giuliani, Parnas, and Fruman. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, here's Adam Schiff trying to correct the record with today's witness, former ambassador of the Ukraine, Marie Yovanovitch.
Ambassador Yovanovitch, I want to follow up on some of the questions from my colleagues. Some of the early questions seem to suggest that your testimony here was completely irrelevant to the issues at hand. Why are you even here? Isn't this just some small matter that should have been referred to HR? So I want to
human resources.
Bring our attention to someone who thought you were actually very important to this whole plot or scheme, and that is the President of the United States.
Hello.
There was only one ambassador, I believe, who was discussed by the President in the July 25th call, and that was you, Ambassador Yovanovitch. And I want to refer back to how you were brought up in that conversation. At one point during the conversation, the President brings up this prosecutor who was very good, and it was shut down, and that's really unfair. And I think you indicated earlier that that was a likely reference to Mr. Lutsenko, the corrupt prosecutor. Is that right?
I believe that is the case, but I don't know.
So immediately after the president brings up this corrupt former prosecutor, only one, I'm sorry, my staff has corrected me, only one American ambassador is brought up in the call. Immediately after the president brings up this corrupt prosecutor that he praises and says he was treated very unfairly, he then encourages Zelensky to speak with Giuliani, the guy who orchestrated the smear campaign against you, correct?
Yes.
And he then brings you up. So he praises the corrupt prosecutor. He says, I want you to talk to Giuliani, the guy who smeared you. And then he brings you up. He obviously thought you were relevant to this. But what is even more telling is immediately after he brings you up and says that you, the woman, was bad news, he says, there's a lot to talk about Biden's son. That Biden stopped the prosecution, and a lot of people want to find out about that. So whatever you can do with the Attorney General would be great. Immediately after praising this corrupt prosecutor, he attacks you. And then he goes right to Biden. That would indicate to you, wouldn't it, Ambassador, that he connects you somehow with this prosecutor you were at odds with and his desire to see this investigation of Biden go forward, would it not?
Again, you're absolutely right that that is the thought progression.
My colleagues also asked, in pushing you out of the way, ultimately Ambassador Taylor got appointed. Is Ambassador Taylor the kind of person that would further Giuliani's aims? And I think we can all agree that Ambassador Taylor is a remarkable public servant.
Absolutely.
But what if the president could put someone else in place that wasn't a career diplomat? What if he could put in place, say, a substantial donor to his inaugural? What if he could put in place someone with no diplomatic experience at all? What if he could put in place someone whose portfolio doesn't even include Ukraine? Might that person be willing to work with Rudy Giuliani in pursuit of these investigations?
Yeah, maybe.
That's exactly what happened, wasn't it?
Yes.
And my colleagues also say, well, the security assistance ultimately went through. So if they sought to condition or bribe Ukraine into doing these investigations by withholding security assistance, they ultimately paid the money. Are you aware, Ambassador, that the security assistance was not released until after a whistleblower complaint made its way to the White House?
Yes, I'm aware of that.
Hello.
Are you aware that it was not released until Congress announced it was doing an investigation?
Yes, I'm aware of that.
And finally, I want to ask you about the call record that my colleague read at the outset. I'm curious about this. And just for people watching at home so they're not confused, there are two calls here. There's the perfunctory congratulatory call after Zelensky is inaugurated, which my ranking member read this morning. And then there's, of course, the very problematic call in July. And one of the reasons we are here is what happened between April and July. But there was a readout put out by the White House at the time the April congratulatory call was made. And the White House readout said that the president discussed with Zelensky helping Ukraine root out corruption. Now, that, in fact, doesn't appear anywhere in that call. So I want to ask you, Ambassador, why would the White House put out an inaccurate reading? Why would the White House represent that the president said something about corruption when he said nothing about corruption in that call or, in fact, in the one in July?
I can't answer that question. I don't have visibility into that.
The president is such a world heavyweight champion, corrupt, lying sack of crap. This is just so amazing. So Rudy Giuliani's play was that he was going to, and I told you, Mr. Lutz, we've always called him that, was a corrupt prosecutor. He was the driver for the previous president, Poroshenko. He was a driver. He had no law degree. He had no legal experience at all. He was a driver. Rudy Giuliani decided that he was going to promote the integrity of the dirty driver / prosecutor in Ukraine and trash the honorable, honest, and true representative of the United States foreign policy in Ukraine, a woman who spent years helping Ukraine meet the anti-corruption benchmarks it needed to meet in order to make it a country that was prosperous, that was free, and that could join NATO. But Rudy Giuliani understood that she was an impediment to the corruption in Ukraine that he wished to exploit for his own gain and Donald Trump as well. And that is why Parnas and Fruman were his associates. That is why they paid him $500,000. They pay, everybody go, like, who's paying Rudy Giuliani? Well, they paid him. Parnas and Fruman paid Rudy Giuliani $500,000, and they were like cash strapped. So where did that money come from? They've been indicted for accepting and laundering Russian money, foreign money, and putting it into our elections. Okay? We know the NRA all of a sudden had $30 million, and we know that Alexander Torshin and Maria Butina, she was convicted, that they were interested in putting Russian money into the U.S. election. I mean, now we know Roger Stone was convicted today, and what he's been accused of is being the intermediary between the Russians who delivered stolen material to WikiLeaks and the Trump campaign. I mean, don't you dare tell me, because the president stands, no collusion, because Mueller limited his investigation into whether or not the president and Putin had a handshake agreement on the hacking. The hacking, no. But everything post-hacking, yes. All of that post-hacking, yes. This GOP platform that was changed by Paul Manafort to not include lethal weapons to Ukraine. Remember that? The GOP platform change? That was to signal to Putin that Trump would do what Putin wanted and that Putin should help him win this election. And that was before Trump was even the nominee. So all of this was part of a giant, massive cover-up of the fact. And this is why, the jury decided that Roger Stone lied. He lied because the truth would have exposed Donald Trump. The truth about this coordination, about this collusion, about this conspiracy to accept the stolen material through WikiLeaks and time it. Time it just so that it would help Donald Trump and destroy Hillary Clinton so that they could create this illusion that she was dirty and there was some secrets in these emails, all this stuff, pre-planned, premeditated, and then a cover-up, a massive cover-up after the fact. It all happened. I'm sorry. I don't know why America's so damn confused about collusion and conspiracy. Why? Because he said it? The man has never spoken a word of truth at all, ever. If it wasn't for... Junior's implicated in this, too. Junior was smearing him on Fox News. Junior was tweeting about her, saying that she was a joker. That's what he tweeted about Marie, to denigrate her and defame her. Giuliani, Fox News, Laura Ingraham, all these people, all of them.
Clear.
Mary had a little man.
We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe it. Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show. Turn up your mind.
Here's Lindsey Graham, everybody.
I'm really over with this. This whole thing is a joke. I am not persuaded by the quid pro quo argument. He tells Sunderland there's no quid pro. Nothing happened here.
Nothing.
We're not going to impeach this president over this. We're not going to legitimize a hearing where you can only call Democratic witnesses. It's over. It's done for me.
It's over. It's done for me because you can only call Democratic witnesses, except the Senate is in the hands of Mitch McConnell and the GOP. So when the trial actually occurs, after the impeachment, the indictment is voted on, then the trial will occur in the very Republican Senate. So how could it be over? How could he be done with it? What is he hiding? This is disgusting and scary that the senator from South Carolina is somehow also implicated in some sort of corruption, some sort of crime, some sort of and all they're doing, we need the whistleblower. We need everything the whistleblower was told and that the whistleblower reported was told to him has been corroborated by these witnesses under oath and now in public under questioning again by GOP members of the Intelligence Committee who were also in the depositions. So all of this is being completely debunked.
Now, I want to know, is there a connection between the whistleblower, the CIA, Biden, or any other Democrat that would make cast suspicions over their motives? I want to get to the bottom of this. We're not going to let the President of the United States be tried based on an anonymous accusation. We're not going to let him be convicted in the Senate based on a bunch of hearsay.
Okay, a bunch of hearsay. Let's see what Rudy Giuliani had to say. Okay, let's see what when Rudy Giuliani just couldn't say no. He just couldn't say no to the TV camera. He couldn't say no. He couldn't. And he decided to go on Fox News, and he decided to promote the corrupt prosecutor who the entire world, the International Monetary Fund that promotes business around the world, invests in business, gets businesses to understand that they will be backed by the International Monetary Fund because this country has been certified as a good country to do business in, a clean country, an anti-corrupt country. Rudy Giuliani decided that he would praise the corrupt prosecutor who prevented them from meeting the benchmarks that were set out for Ukraine of anti-corruption, right? And he decided that he would call the true and honest and decent State Department officials who were in charge of this anti-corruption effort, who set up this panel of anti-corruption, NABU. Remember we talked to you about NABU? It was an anti-corruption sort of a agency that the Ukrainians were encouraged to set up, and they did. At the behest of the United States, our foreign policy, and they did do it. Rudy decided that he would trash all of the decent, honest, and true efforts that were being made at anti-corruption, and he would promote the corrupt prosecutor.
What I did, first of all, it demonstrates that I prosecuted well. That may be a Freudian slip. I investigated all of this starting in November of 2018, and I finished it by March 28, 2019. Now, why is that significant?
Because that's when you smeared
because
her.
All of this was done while the Mueller investigation was still pending, while I was seeking, in the best tradition of being a lawyer, a defense lawyer, to vindicate my client. This is information that was given to me. I didn't go looking for Joe Biden. The Ukrainians brought me substantial evidence of Ukrainian collusion with Hillary Clinton, the DNC, George Soros's company.
Oh, my God.
They put it in my lap. They came and gave me testimony. I wrote it out. I had a professional investigator make FBI 302s of it. Eventually, it was John Solomon, who should get a Pulitzer Prize, by the way.
He's been fired.
Put them all on tape, so it's all memorialized on videotapes.
Oh, I'd love to see that.
So this is solid as it can get. And I interviewed them. In one case, I interviewed Lutsenko so badly he thought he was being cross-examined. I don't accept I didn't do what this phony whistleblower did. This phony whistleblower is giving hearsay evidence. He says, I'm not a direct witness. Okay, useless, pal. You're not a direct witness. Goodbye. I have what's called an affidavit here. This is not what the whistleblower did. This is under oath. It's signed under penalties of perjury by Victor Shokin. Victor Shokin has told me he's more than willing to come to America and testify before Congress and point the finger at Joe Biden and his son and basically support what the president said today. They're corrupt as sin. This is so obvious. It's like the nose on your face, Sean. The Ukrainian oligarch Zlochevsky didn't pay millions for Hunter Biden's non-existent skill. He paid millions to buy the vice president's office, and it was a good deal for Zlochevsky. He got Hunter Biden off the hook. He got Soros's company out of jeopardy, and he got to come back to the Ukraine and keep his $5 billion.
So he's promoting Victor Shokin, who was the dirty prosecutor, who the entire world told Ukraine, the entire civilized world, the entire Western world, told Ukraine they needed to get rid of in order to make an effort at anti-corruption efforts, right? They needed to set up this agency, this anti-corruption agency. And one of the first things they needed to do was to straighten out the judicial system, which every witness testified so far. George Kent testified, Bill Taylor testified. They all testified that one of the main concerns for investment in Ukraine was a dirty, corrupt legal system. that was completely controlled by a handful, maybe, and Marie Yovanovitch testified there may be 4 or 5 people that controlled all of Ukraine politics, that controlled all of Ukraine's money, that controlled the oligarchs, right? There were 4 or 5 of them, and that Viktor Yanukovych was propping them up and enriching himself because it was a mafia situation where they had to kick back to him, but still he stole. Still Viktor Yanukovych stole from the Ukrainian people, and that's why they drove him out of Dodge, and he ran back into the loving arms of Vladimir Putin, all right? So not to make this complicated, what you need to know is they had a very corrupt system, mostly having to do with oligarchs and the president stealing from their own treasury, as Putin does, and a corrupt justice system. And this is who Rudy's relying on, is the corrupt justice, the corrupt prosecutors, the corrupt, people that were greased and bought off. That's who he's relying on. And he's smearing and defaming and degrading and denigrating the honest and true people who were working their tails off to help Ukraine decorrupt themselves, right? And then, of course, this theory, George Soros, and it's all George Soros, and this whole State Department is owned by George. This is another thing that's going on Fox News, and I know a lot of you don't watch this, but you need to understand what it is that, Joe DeGeneva and Rudy Giuliani and Victoria Tensing are promoting on freaking Fox News, which was implicated today in a propaganda effort by Marie Yovanovitch.
Well, there's no doubt that George Soros controls a very large part of the career foreign service of the United States State Department. Oh, my God. He also controls the activities of FBI agents overseas who work for NGOs, work with NGOs. That was very evident in Ukraine. And Kent was part of that. He was George a very big protector of Soros. His testimony today showed this kind of stern sort of discomfort with not being included in certain discussions. Mm-hmm. But the truth is, George Soros had a daily opportunity to tell the State Department through Victoria Nuland what to do in Ukraine. Mm-hmm. And he ran it. Soros ran it. He corrupted FBI officials. He corrupted foreign service officers. Mm-hmm. And the bottom line is this. George Soros wants to run Ukraine, and he's doing everything he can to use every lever of the United States government to make that happen for business interests.
These are some sick, twisted people. Now, I know they're smart. See, this is why you can't call them stupid. Victoria Tensing and George DeGeneva are smart. So what are they, sitting around in the living room shooting up meth and coming up with these conspiracy theories and then vomiting them out on Fox News? I don't know.
Randy at RandyRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
All right, so this just in, the press just caught up with President Trump and asked him about the witness tampering he engaged in this morning.
What do you say to Democrats that say you were witness tampering this morning when you made that tweet?
You don't want to talk about transparency? I'll talk about transparency. I like transparency here, and I'm the most transparent president in history. And I'll tell you about what tampering is. Tampering is when a guy like Shifty Schiff doesn't let us have lawyers. Tampering is when Schiff doesn't let us have witnesses, doesn't let us speak. I've been watching today. For the first time, I started watching.
Oh, really?
And it's really sad when you see people not allowed to ask questions. It's totally, nobody's ever had such horrible due process. There was no due process. And I think it's considered a joke all over Washington and all over the world. The Republicans are given no due process whatsoever. We're not allowed to do anything. It's a disgrace what's happening. But you know what? The American public understands it, and that's why the poll numbers are so good, and that's why other things are so good. What they're doing in Washington with that hearing, and by the way, it's a political process. It's not a legal process. So if I have somebody saying I'm allowed to speak up, if somebody says about me, we're not allowed to have any kind of representation. What? We're not allowed to have almost anything. And nobody's seen anything like it. In the history of our country, there has never been a disgrace like what's going on right now. So you know what? I have the right to speak. I have freedom of speech, just as other people do. But they've taken away the Republicans' rights. And I watched today as certain very talented people wanted to ask questions, and they weren't even allowed to ask questions.
What?
Republicans. They weren't allowed to ask questions. It's a very sad thing.
That did not happen.
Go ahead.
Sir, with your freedom.
Sir, with your freedom, were you trying to intimidate Ambassador Yovanovitch?
I just want to have I want freedom of speech. That's a political process. The Republicans have been treated very badly, and I watched a little bit of it today. I wasn't able to yesterday because we had the president of Turkey here, and I wasn't able to watch much. Right. I watched some of it this morning. I thought it was a disgrace. When we have great Republican representatives, people elected by the people, and they're not allowed to even ask a question. They're not allowed to make a statement. We're not allowed to have witnesses. We're not allowed to have legal counsel, White House counsel. It's a disgrace, and it's an embarrassment to our nation.
Do you believe your tweets and your words can be intimidating?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Sir, do you believe your tweets and words can be intimidating?
Quiet.
Sir, do you believe your tweets and words can be intimidating?
I don't think so at all.
Oh, my God. Okay, so he was asked about witness tampering and he refuses to answer. He just said it's a disgrace, it's a disgrace. Nobody was prohibited from asking any question that they wanted to ask of Marie Yovanovitch. There was GOP counsel as picked by Devin Nunes, the ranking member. The only time that people were prohibited from speaking was when they were out of order. So at the beginning, the House rules that were voted on by the Republicans back in 2015 when they had control of the House. Those are the rules that the House is using and following. These are the Republican rules that the Republicans voted on in 2015 when they had the House. So these aren't Democratic rules at all. That's number one. Number two, the rules say that the Democrats get 45 minutes and then the ranking member, Devin Nunes, got 45 minutes. And during those particular 45-minute sections, Devin Nunes could yield any or all of his time to the counsel that he picked. And what Devin Nunes did was he tried to yield to members of the committee. But these are the Republican rules, and the Republican rules that they voted on in 2015 prohibit the ranking member from yielding to a member of the committee until after those 45 minutes are over. And then after those 45 minutes are over, each and every member of the majority and each and every member of the minority is given the 5-minute rule, which we're all familiar with. 5 minutes to ask any questions that they wanted, and they were allowed to do so. So the president is lying, which is shocking, I tell you, but he's also deflecting from the fact that he was witness tampering while she was testifying, and it is a pattern. This is what the president does. He did it with Michael Cohen. Michael Cohen was a great guy until Michael Cohen started to cooperate. Michael Cohen is a rat. He did it to Roger Stone, did it too. Roger Stone, Randy Credico, you're going to die, you're going to die. Oh, you're a great guy. Just, nobody cares if you lie. Just lie for us. This is what they do.
On the issue of witness intimidation, there's been talk today that this could potentially be considered impeachable. Is it more obstruction of justice or abuse of power in your view at this point?
Well, I would say that the president's attack on a witness today is not something that we view in isolation. This is part of a pattern of the President of the United States, a pattern that goes back to praising Paul Manafort for not cooperating, condemning Michael Cohen as a rat because he was cooperating with authorities, attacking other witnesses who come forward, suggesting that we ought to treat those like the whistleblower who exposed wrongdoing in his administration as we treat traitors and spies, and we used to execute traitors and spies.
Right.
This is a part of a pattern to intimidate witnesses, and it's also part of a pattern to obstruct the investigation. Yes. It was also a part, frankly, of the pattern to obstruct justice. And so we need to view the president's actions today as part of a broader and incriminating pattern of conduct.
Right. So that was Adam Schiff, obviously responding to what the president said there, which was nothing except that it's a disgrace. It's a disgrace. We can't call witnesses. Well, which witnesses did you want to call? Did you want to call Mike Pompeo? Because you told him not to testify. Did you want to call Rick Perry? Because you told him not to testify. Did you want to call Don McGahn? Because you told him not to testify. Did you want to call, I don't know, anybody with firsthand knowledge, about this months-long effort to withhold security assistance to Ukraine? Did you want to call Mick Mulvaney? Did you want to call him? Because you told him not to testify. You see what I mean here? They're lying. They're just freaking lying. He is obstructing 8 ways to Sunday and lying and lying and lying. And, it's not going to work because, as I said, the trial, this is the indictment period. So let's just explain this to people who are not lawless, but not really familiar with how people get indicted and then recommended or remanded for trial. So what happens is you have a grand jury. That's what the House is. You have to think of the House as the grand jury. In a grand jury proceeding, there's only a prosecutor. There is no defense attorney. There is no lawyer for the other side. There's only a prosecutor who is talking to the jurors and telling the jurors what this case is and what evidence they have and whether or not they have probable cause to believe that the person in question did this corrupt thing or this illegal thing. The jury will return an indictment or not return an indictment. And then it goes to trial. The trial is when the defense gets to bring their defense attorney, gets to present their side of the case, if there is one. Roger Stone's defense presented nothing.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
Little shifty shift. It's got the little 10-inch neck.
Huh.
What size shirts do you need, Adam? I wear a size 9. 9. He will not make the LSU football team, that I can tell you. Boom. And the neck is gone. Now, he's a bad guy. He's a dishonest guy. He's the guy that went up and fabricated a whole story and read what I supposedly said to the new and very good, I think, new Ukrainian president. And Adam Shifty Schiff went up and he made up, think of it, he made up my statement. And it was horrible what he said. And he finished it by saying, "You don't call me, I'll call you." I said, where did this come from? He's sick. He's sick.
So that was last night. That was Donald Trump with his, cult, with his, little cult there, trashing the appearance of Adam Schiff's neck because Donald Trump's is so attractive. Have you? I mean, could you just have a look, saying that Adam Schiff is not physically fit enough to make the LSU football team, as if Donald Trump could? Listen, I don't know why personal attacks seem to, play with his crowd, but that doesn't defend you in a court of law that Adam Schiff's neck is something you don't like. I mean, it makes no sense, but this is what he spent his time doing last night. Somebody needed a rally. And you know why he was down there in Louisiana? He's stumping for a GOP candidate for governor. Now, what does a governor have to do with his removal from office or his impeachment? I have no idea. Somebody just needed a rally. I guess he's very upset about, Mr. Bashir. He's losing everywhere he goes now. Everywhere he goes. Everybody's ending up in jail. Manafort's in jail. Roger Stone is going to get, jail time. Michael Cohen is in jail. Flynn is, he hasn't been sentenced yet, but, Flynn is going to jail, or at least he's, I don't know what they're going to. Rick Gates is, guilty too. Everyone around him has been indicted. Everyone around him has been adjudicated as guilty or pled guilty to a crime. I mean, this is just so unbelievable. And all he has is insults for the way somebody appears to look to him. The size of their hands, the size of their neck. What kind of president is this? Oh, and I have to play you this because this is just crazy, okay? He's stumping for some guy who has absolutely no experience doing anything at all in government. He's some sort of a businessman. His name is Eddie Rispone. This is who Donald Trump wants to replace the current governor of Louisiana, who happens to be a Democrat, John Bel Edwards. Okay, and this is a redder than red, ruby, Christmas red state, and they got themselves a Democratic governor, right? So here.
You got to vote on Saturday. It's a close one, and you're going to have a great Republican governor. You know that. You're going to have a great Republican governor. He's going to bring down the car insurance.
The car insurance.
Bring down your taxes. If you want to defend your values, your jobs, and your freedom, then you need to replace radical, liberal John Bel Edwards with a true Louisiana patriot, Eddie Rispone. Eddie Rispone.
Okay, first of all, it's perfectly obvious that Donald Trump has no idea who Eddie Rispone is. And the second thing that's obvious is Donald Trump doesn't understand that the legislature in Louisiana is completely Republican. The third thing he doesn't understand is why car insurance is so expensive in Louisiana. And it's because they have elected judges there who are in the pocket of industries, certain industry. Okay, and Louisiana has 40% of their drivers in Louisiana are underinsured. They have crap insurance policies. That's number one. Number two, another 15% of Louisiana drivers drive without any auto insurance. Number three, the judges allow for these really bad claims to move forward through their system. And so what you have there is the trifecta of insurance prices off the charts. Now, I will tell you, the GOP legislature in Louisiana every single year, the Democrats, who are in the minority, obviously, keep putting tort reform on the floor to fix the insurance industry's malfeasance and bad practices in Louisiana, and stop issuing policies that don't cover bodily injury, don't cover anything. And so that's why there's so many lawsuits, because there's so many underinsured people and people get injured. Louisiana has a very, very, very high accident rate. I'm not sure if it's DUIs. I'm not sure if it's drugs. I'm not sure what it is. But every year, tort reform is introduced into the GOP legislature, and every year it's defeated. Every year. So what does this have to do with the real... I don't know. He is a lying sack of crap. Joe on Long Island.
Hi, Randy.
Hi, Joe.
I want to repeat something that Mr. Kent said. You can't fight corruption without pissing off corrupt people.
That's right.
That's right. And, the Republicans had Congress for 2 years and wouldn't rein down this president with all the things, with the collusion with the Russians, with the family business in China. The Democrats got to tear down that for sale sign over the Republican committee's office.
Well, I mean, obviously, our government is completely purchased. I mean, there's no question that campaign finance reform is like, and that's H.R. 1. That's the first bill that the House Democrats voted on, was to clean this up, okay? And, of course, Mitch McConnell, closes the Senate for any legislative activity. And then he had the nerve yesterday to get on the floor and go, they're so busy impeaching that they just won't legislate when we have a trade deal and we have this and we have... Oh, Mitch, go tell somebody who's going to, actually believe a word you say. 250 pieces of legislation the House passed, the Democrats passed, 250. Everything, we had another school shooting yesterday, everything on background checks, everything on clean government, everything on paper ballot backups for this here election. Mitch McConnell will not take up anything because they like the corruption. They are protecting the corruption. And if we don't fix it, I hope everybody is learning right now in real time that we're becoming more like Russia then Russia is becoming like us. We're becoming less like a democracy, less like a republic, and more like an oligarchy, a kleptocracy, more like Ukraine was. And it takes years to clean this mess up. Years. Every time we have a Republican president, every time we either go to war with an unarmed nation, or the economy crashes, or Wall Street has, the greatest day of their lives until it all comes to a screeching halt, and then we pick up the tab. I mean, they are corrupt.
It's the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
Leader McConnell has shuttered the Senate when it comes to legislative business. The House has passed over 250 bills that Leader McConnell has taken no action on here in the Senate. Leader McConnell proudly called himself the Grim Reaper.
Yep.
And blocked just about everything that came through the House.
Exactly. All I could take is 22 seconds of Chuck. Okay, that's all I could take. In person, he's charming, believe me. And he's Rain Man. He could tell me how much weight I gained or lost from the last time he saw me, like down to the ounce. It's very creepy. But he's right. He's right. 250 pieces of legislation and everything having to do with election protection, with campaign finance reform, which would go a long way to ending the purchase of the Senate and the House members and the presidency, right? All of these things, gun control, background checks, something 98% of the American people want, including gun owners, okay? Can't get anything done. All he keeps doing is sweeping in these ill-qualified, poorly versed, never tried a case judges. It's very sick. It's very, very corrupt. It's super bad. And once the judicial system becomes so corrupt that there is no way to get a fair trial, there is no way to hold a president accountable, there is no way for a president to be admonished by a court that you must produce your tax returns, that you must, because the law says that if the House Ways and Means Committee chairman or the Senate Finance Committee chairman requests your tax returns, the IRS shall produce them. I mean, if Donald Trump keeps losing in court that tax case, right? He just lost again yesterday. The D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals ruled again that Donald Trump has to produce his tax returns. Has to. They tried to argue that Donald Trump is immune from any investigation. That this was the result. This was the verdict from the court that heard this particular argument from Donald Trump's lawyer.
What's your view on the Fifth Avenue example? Local authorities couldn't investigate. They couldn't do anything about it.
I think once a president is removed from office, any local authority. This is not a permanent immunity.
Well, I'm talking about while in office.
No.
Nothing could be done. That's your position.
That is correct.
That was the argument that was made, and that Judge Chin, was part of the D.C. Appeals Court, and they ruled yesterday, no, local authorities can investigate a president while he's president. They, according to this OLC opinion, can't indict him, but they can investigate him, and if the investigation includes him turning his taxes over to the Manhattan District Attorney, then that is what shall be done. So he lost that. So what does he do? He's going to go to the Supreme Court. Now, I just want you to be very, very smart. I want you to be better educated than anybody else out there, especially over the holidays. The Supreme Court should not take this case. Why? Because the Supreme Court takes cases where the courts are in dispute with each other, right? And it needs to weigh in because, let's say, a district court and several appeals courts come up with different opinions. So the Supreme Court would be the arbiter. They would decide which court was right. There is nothing like that present in this case. Everybody agrees the law is the law, and it says shall, that the IRS shall produce upon request from a local authority or the House Ways and Means Committee chair or the Senate Finance Committee chair. And that has happened. So there's no dispute in the law. There's no dispute in the facts. And there's no dispute in the courts. The Supreme Court should not even hear this. So now we have to sit here and see if the Supreme Court's going to take up a case where his attorneys are going to argue Nobody can investigate the president. Nobody. And you know what's really strange? In their argument that they made that the president could kill you if he wanted to, and nothing could happen to him at all because he's immune from investigation, they said the proper place to investigate and to try is impeachment and a Senate trial. So here we are in the middle of impeachment and a forthcoming Senate trial, and they're going to argue that that's a witch hunt. That's not the proper venue either. I want to let you know that 2 previous presidents have tried this theory. Nixon tried it and Clinton tried it. And both of them received a unanimous no from the Supreme Court. Now, Clinton didn't argue that he was immune from investigation. He argued that it would be burdensome for him to answer a civil suit in the middle of his presidency. The Supreme Court said, yeah, too bad. Nixon argued that his papers and his tapes were protected under executive privilege. And the Supreme Court said, no, produce the tapes. Donald Trump, however, is making this argument that you can't even investigate him and that he's immune from even asking him a question about any behavior while arguing that the proper venue is in the House. It makes no sense to me. It makes absolutely no sense, and the Supreme Court should not even take it. Eileen in Philly.
Oh, for God's sake. Oh, for God's sake.
I love her.
Did this man ever not meet a woman that he didn't attempt to denigrate or dominate? I mean, it's so disgusting.
Did he ever meet any person that he didn't decide was disloyal and needed to be destroyed and criticize their neck? I mean, what is that?
So I've been wanting to call you, and finally my hours changed, your hours changed, and I haven't been able to, but I finally had jury duty this week.
Oh.
We found him guilty. He was...
Oh, you did?
Guilty. Yes. But I had a momentous anniversary. So 5 years ago in the spring, I was diagnosed with bilateral breast cancer.
Oh.
And the day that I was diagnosed, you were saying goodbye to radio.
Oh, no.
And
oh, my God.
Stephanie Miller was on there, and she was crying.
She was crying.
You were comforting her.
I remember that. I couldn't believe she cried. She actually broke down, yeah.
She cries at the drop of a hat.
I know.
I love you both.
She's a weepy lesbian.
Anyway.
There's no question. Yes.
So anyway, here it is. 5 years later, I've completed my treatment, and in October, they declared me cancer-free.
Oh.
So I'm cancer-free. You're back on the radio. Like, everything is right with the world. All we need is to get rid of this orange menace, and, things will be hopefully taking a turn for better.
And the skies will open and the angels will weep. Exactly. Exactly. Well, congratulations. That 5-year anniversary is like the best.
It's huge. And, the whole time I was in the courtroom, I kept waiting for Joe Pesci to come in. Your Honor.
The Utes. The
whole store had the flu.
Thank you, Miss Mona Lisa DeVito. You are a beautiful, beautiful witness. Yes. I love that movie.
I do, too. I memorized the whole thing.
Yeah, me too.
Posy
traction.
I wanted to
All
share
right.
that with you.
Thank you. I appreciate you thinking of me in this way. Thank you very much. That means a lot. Thank you.
Good luck to you.
You too. Have a good weekend out there. Margaret in Kentucky. Margaret.
Hello.
We're on a delay, so turn it down. Yeah.
Oh, well, sorry.
No, it's okay.
I'll just step in the other room.
Okay.
My question was the phone calls.
Yeah.
The second one, that there was something in that they decided to put that away somewhere out of public viewing.
Yeah.
And we got someone's version of that call.
Right.
Will we ever hear the original, you think? And what was in it that it had to be hid away?
I don't think it was recorded. So the notes that were taken by Alexander Vindman, the lieutenant colonel, he's already testified in the deposition, and also he will testify next week about what was missing from the memo.
Okay, right. That's what I wondered.
Yeah, there is no actual recording. I don't believe. I don't believe. And
I thought someone had announced on TV that they decided that the content could be damaging to the president or the country, and it had to be secreted away somewhere.
It was to another server, but I believe what was secreted away to the code word protected clandestine server was the actual notes that were taken. I think so. We'll find out next week, though, for sure. So.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Well, I just wondered, will we ever get to the bottom of that one?
Well, I don't know, honey. Where are you in Kentucky?
Rush, Kentucky.
Where is that?
Right outside of Ashland.
Ah, I know where you are. I used to be right over the border from you in Scioto County in Ohio, in Portsmouth.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We have relatives over in Scioto County.
One day we're going to have to exchange Kentuckian and Ohioan jokes.
Okay.
I love
that. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure thing. Have a good weekend.
You too.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
thanks. Bye. All right, so next week, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, hearings, right? Enjoy your weekend. Rest up. We're all going to need all the energy we got for next week. Truly. And if you're really curious, rewatch the testimony from this week.